Welcome back, troops. Welcome back. Hope you're having a great day. Last night on the news, 8 weekends for a fellow who ran down another man and left him potentially to die in the street outside the courtroom. Speaking, I think, for us all was the Undersheriff of Monroe County, Drew Forsythe, who joins us now. Good morning, sir. Thanks for speaking with us. I appreciate it.
Good morning, Bob. Thanks for having me on.
You betcha. What do we know about what happened, or what do we suspect about what happened that morning that Michael Frisch was run down?
Well, it's like, as you mentioned earlier, Michael, here is a guy, like you had mentioned earlier, the salt of the earth, trying to provide for his family. So he's riding his bicycle into work because they can't afford another car. And so he's trying to go into work. He's riding along Empire Blvd when he's struck by Mr. Patron. And so, like I said yesterday, after the accident happened, Mr. Patron had a couple of options, right? He could have done the right thing, pulled over, tried to render aid, but instead he chose to be a coward and leave the scene and leave Mr. Frisch lying along the side of the road by himself. So it kind of struck a nerve with all of us.
Do we know anything about the activities or location of Mr. Patron or others before the Mr. Frisch was struck?
Yeah, we do know that prior to the accident earlier in the night that he was drinking at a bar down in Canisius, and so we do know that he was drinking. But obviously, when he left the scene, we weren't able to determine any level of intoxication. Was
he drinking alone down there? Or?
No, it's our indications that his wife was with him. They were at an establishment down there, and then from there we believe he went to his parents' house, and then from there he was on his way home in Webster, where he lives.
And he's said that he was in that vehicle. Do we know where she was, sir?
She was in the vehicle with him.
Also, are we confident that he was the driver? Or?
Yeah, we are confident that he was the driver based on information interviews that we did after the accident. There was text messages that were sent after the accident indicating that he was driving. So we're very comfortable and confident that he was, in fact, the driver.
Speaking with Monroe County Undersheriff Drew Forsythe, how did this investigation unfold?
Well, obviously the accident occurred, and luckily for Mr. Frisch, there was a passerby that came upon him several minutes after the accident, and he's the one who called 911 to render aid. So that's how we got the call initially.
And I mean, you obviously are trying to find, well, where's the car? Who did this? How did that come together?
Well, the investigation afterwards, at the scene there was parts of the car that were left there that we were in the process of running that down through some local car dealers to match up what type of vehicle that piece of metal matched. And then a couple of days later, that there was a Crime Stoppers tip indicating that led us to Mr. Patron. And
did Mr. Patron ever speak with your investigators?
No. Once we identified him as potentially his vehicle, potentially being involved, we went to his residence, and as you know, we ultimately served the search warrant, found the vehicle inside of his garage. We attempted to interview both him and his wife, who both requested an attorney.
Speaking with Monroe County Undersheriff Drew Forsythe, and they never spoke with you, and I guess at a certain point this becomes a district attorney matter.
Yeah, so initially we attempted to try and get their side of the story as to their involvement in it, who was driving, and they requested an attorney, so we never were able to speak to them. So our investigation continued on with electronic subpoenas on phones, forensically with the car, and the normal investigative techniques that we take. And the Crime Stoppers tip was definitely a key element to us to try and locate ultimately where we found the car. So, from there we put the case together as best we could with the information and the evidence that we had, and it culminated yesterday with Mr. Patron admitting his guilt.
Folks are always impatient. We watch the TV shows and we want resolution now. This must also be hard for investigators who, are trying to put something together, and when the bad guy doesn't cooperate, when it seems that the system serves his interests and not the interests of justice, that has to be frustrating.
Yeah, it is in this particular case. I mean, early on, once we discovered the car, we were confident, very comfortable that he was in fact the driver. But trying to make an arrest based on non-direct, and there's no witnesses linking him directly to that. It's very frustrating. It's difficult, and that's what I mentioned yesterday. Our major crimes guys did a tremendous job trying to put the case together and then presenting it to the DA's office, and we were going to be going forward with a grand jury action, and at that point, Mr. Patron through his attorney and the district attorney's office met, and they came up with the plea agreement.
You're also speaking for the sheriff's office here. You're dealing with a crime. You're also dealing with the victim and a victim's family. These are real people, and their interests you're trying to advance and protect.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in this particular case, it hits a nerve with all of us, right? This family, like I mentioned earlier, this guy is just trying to work at McDonald's to provide for his wife and his kids, and it's very frustrating for them. We were obviously in contact with them throughout the process, and having the opportunity to meet Mrs. Frisch, to see the personal side of how she's dealing with it. And she spoke so eloquently yesterday about how things are going to be forever changed, but how her husband is fighting. He wishes he could walk. He wishes he could get back to being the way that he was. And then, unfortunately, that's probably never going to be quite the same. And the aftermath of something like this, an accident like this that affects not only the community but this family in particular, and to have to go on and they're dealing with a lot of financial issues now, emotional, and then certainly physical for Mr. Frisch. So it's very difficult, and it definitely strikes a nerve with all of us in law enforcement and obviously the community as well. Speaking
with Monroe County Undersheriff Andrew Forsythe, yesterday you played an interesting role. I mean, there can be the Joe Friday, just the facts, quiet, well, this, that, and the other. But you stood up and you spoke in a forceful way yesterday. What were you doing, and why did you do it, please, sir?
Well, number one, I felt for the family. I felt for Mr. Frisch, and the actions of Mr. Patron that particular day, he had other options. An accident happens, and you have the opportunity at least to then, make a wrong a right, and to try and help somebody that we all would, right? Along the side of the road, you hit somebody, it's just a natural inclination to try and help them. And that's what we all would do. We hope that everybody would do that. And in this particular case, it didn't happen. And so, in my own personal life, my family's been affected by, I had the death of a sister from a car accident a number of years ago. So for me personally, it strikes a chord with me. And so I think I tried to yesterday to not only represent this family, but in my own situation, knowing how my family dealt with a situation that they had gone through. So all those things culminated with with what I said, and I stand by that.
And the law is all cut and dried and neat and quiet and proper, and that's as it should be. But there is a moral outrage. There is this is wrong, this is cowardly, this is a person who did a terrible thing, and somebody needs to say that sometimes.
Well, yeah, I felt that he admitted his guilt in court, and I think that that admission was because of the pressures put on by law enforcement, because of the work that we did to get it to us working with the district attorney's office to have this take place yesterday. And so it's the system is sometimes not always the best, but you work within the system and you try and do what's right. And we feel that there was definitely some justice served for Mr. and Mrs. Frisch yesterday, and now they can move forward with the next chapter of the process in their life. So,
I think, speaking with Undersheriff Andrew Forsythe of Monroe County, I think they might need to change the law just a little bit or somehow. It seems that some drunk drivers, whether or not this man Patron was a drunk driver or not, we don't know, but it seems that there's this increasing tendency for, if I'm a drunk driver and I hit somebody or something, I just drive away. I don't stop, and I go on my metabolize, I lawyer up. There is a path that seems to avoid a lot of criminal responsibility. Do you see that phenomenon with your department, sir?
Well, thankfully, that's not. It's more the exception versus the rule. As indicated with this particular accident, that may have been the case. I'm not. We'll never know. You hope from your own moral compass that if you get involved in an accident and you got to do the right thing, you have to try to minimize the situation as best you can. And in this particular case, had Mr. Patron just stopped and helped him, who knows what his condition would be today. Maybe it would be better than he is now. And, thankfully, if God forbid, if somebody wasn't driving by at 5 in the morning, which, at that time of the morning, there's not a lot of traffic there. So had he laid there, God only knows what would have happened.
100%. Speaking with Undersheriff Andrew Forsythe, another completely different question, just to let people understand who you are and such like that. maybe 20 years ago or so. I'm not good with time, but you yourself were injured in the line of duty. Could you tell us about that, please?
Sure. Yeah, it was almost 20 years ago. Actually, in December will be 20 years, and I was involved in a traffic stop in Henrietta. I had 3 years on the job, and during the traffic stop, I was shot 3 times, and the Mr. Zametti who shot me ended up taking his own life. So, very fortunate and thankful to survive that incident and moved on with my career. So.
What? This is a terrible question. What is it like to be shot?
Well, you never hope that it occurs, but for me, it was obviously a shock. I never thought or anticipated that it would happen to me. But when you're in the moment, you kind of react to your training. But I could say that it was extremely painful, and a lot of thoughts go through your mind. Here I was, 28 years old, with 3 years on the job, and this is a career that is the best career that anybody could have. And all these things go through your mind. Like for me personally, having had my sister killed in an accident a few years prior, and you think about your parents. My parents were in Florida at the time, and I didn't want them to know that I was shot, because when my sister was killed, they had to deal with all that. So there's a lot of things that go through your mind, worrying about everybody other than yourself, and that was my first thought in my particular incident, was worrying about my family.
Yeah, I mean, you could die. They could get a bad knock on the door. You could also, if you survive, you could lose your career. You could lose the use of your body.
Yeah, that was a concern early on. Like, since I was 5 years old, I had an uncle that was a police officer that I always emulated and wanted to be like. And so you work your whole life, you try and live life the right way to achieve your lifelong goal. And to have that taken by another cowardly act, within seconds, it weighs on you. You never think it's going to happen to you, but when it does occur, your thoughts, you'll naturally go to your loved ones, because it's never about, at least for me, it wasn't about me. It was like, how are my parents going to deal with it? They knew when I became a police officer, this is what I wanted to do, and if I ever had to die before I was 80 years old, this would be the career and the way that I'd like to go out honorably, serving my community. So. My parents they went through a lot with not only my sister but with me. So to come through that and to then progress through my career I'm very grateful.
Undersheriff Andrew Forsythe, one last question. I really should end there, but like after recuperation and recovery, when you are back out and it's the first time you're walking up on a car, another traffic stop, what was that like? Did your experience being shot in that setting, did that impact your policing after that?
It really did. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say. I mean, I was extremely nervous when I came back to work. I was out of work for about a year and a half, and the ironic thing is the first car that I stopped, it was a lady in a minivan that didn't really understand what I was stopping her for. So she got out of the car and started walking back to my car. So, I was extremely nervous with that. And then, a couple of days later, I went to stop a car that was a stolen car, and a foot chase ensued. So, your reaction, you just react to it. But there's no denying that, for months after that traffic stop where I was injured, I was very apprehensive and nervous, and I think it's just natural to try and go through all those emotions. It brings back to the incident of the traffic stop where I was shot, but you have to persevere through that. And like I said, I was fortunate throughout my career to continue on. A lot of people that are involved in shootings, that they're unable to do that. And for me to be able to continue my career, the great doctors that I had, initially they said I was never going to use my hand again. And so I'm thinking, I'm 28 years old, am I ever going to work again? And I made it my mission to get back to work. And he wasn't going to win. But let's put it that way. This guy that did that to me was not going to win, and so I did everything I could to try and get back to doing the career that I love.
When a little over a year ago, a report came that Officer Pearson up on Hudson Avenue had been shot and was lost. Your unique history and situation, what did that feel like? What was that like, sir?
It always goes back to the emotions of what happened to me. So I remember when DePonzio was shot, and then shortly after me, the 3 guys on North Street were shot. So when I go up to the hospital, I think I have a unique perspective, and it kind of goes back to your own personal situation, and you realize what the families are going to. And in the case of Darryl, it was just I was up at the hospital, and seeing his family come in, and all the cops that were showing up there, the citizens, the clergy. It really brings back everything full circle to 20 years ago, and the emotions that you have, are unique in the fact that thankfully there's not that many people that are around here that were involved in a shooting, but you try and just lend your support and let the families know that you're there for them, because I think with our career, it's all about a brother and a sisterhood, and we're always there for each other. And in today's society, as violent as it's become, we have to be there for each other.
100%. Undersheriff Drew Forsythe, thanks for your service and thanks for speaking with us today, sir. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate your time.
God bless you. Take care.